Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It is January 31st, and we couldn't be more excited to be seeing you today. That's right. We have some awesome stories, and so many things have been going on in the world that there's just never enough time to talk about it. But hopefully, within these 2 hours, we can fit everything. Hopefully.
Hopefully. And hello, everybody who's listening to us, wherever you're listening to us, wherever you're watching us. This is MindMine, and with Tatiana and Evin. And I can't believe it's basically the second month of 2018 already. What?
I know, we're still alive.
What? Oh, yeah, that's
just
always
happy.
A plus.
Yeah, right? I'm just happy that we're still kicking. We are still breathing. No bombs have gone off thus far.
Oh.
And the whole entire U.S. hasn't imploded. So I'm excited. It's a great day to be alive, folks. That's all I'm saying.
What are you drinking, and can I have some?
Water and espresso. Check it out.
Oh, espresso. Espresso is good. Let me take a sip as well.
In our fancy mugs, which, again, if you're on Twitch, you can check it out. If you're not and you're on Podbean, make sure every Wednesday to check us out live if you want to join in on the conversation. Also, just to jump in, if you're new to the talk show here, our main goal is to give you a genuine and authentic perspective on left brain and right brain topics, how they intersect, where they collide, and how it impacts your life. There's going to be times where there isn't a very clear path or direction to go, or no extreme end point a lot of times to these topics, because they're currently ongoing or they're very early in their stages of what we're talking about with this, that it just takes a little bit of time. And, time will tell truly what's going to happen with some of the topics that we talk about. So that's really the important thing to understand from this, is that it's good to get that discussion going. And it's really important that we start talking about it now so we can better prepare ourselves, whether for good or bad, no matter the subject. Also, we're big advocates of education and sharing out information. And a lot of times we get bombarded by so much information every single day. You get emails, you get little notifications through Instagram, Facebook, Discord, you name it, it's going to happen. And so we hopefully try to filtrate some of that, so that way you're getting some of the big news here from the left brain and the right brain. And, you really get a discussion going in chat here. We love to have you come in and discuss with us. And throughout the process, we will try our best to get to questions and comments and everything else in chat. But we will be a lot of times just deep in conversation. So if we do miss something, we're not ignoring you. Please feel free to repeat it later on in the show. If we get toward the end and we haven't gotten to you yet, please make sure to repeat that question or comment, and we'll make sure to go more in depth on it as best as we can with the time that we have. So for that, thank you so much for your patience and for hanging out with us today. So we're going to jump in. What are our topics for today, though? What can people look forward to in these next 2 hours?
Okay, in just one word for each topic, I'm gonna try to condense it. Try to under 140 characters. Old school Twitter. World building, flamethrowers, cloning, and AI.
So the usual, right?
Yeah. That's about covers it, I think, right?
That sounds like an ordinary day.
Yeah, I talk about world building all the time to myself.
And flamethrowers.
Because, right?
It's like The Walking Dead every day. So let's get into this. Let's jump in with the first topic.
All right. So if you don't know already, I do a little bit of writing, or I fancy myself a writer, an author, if you will. And one of my most favorite things to write and also read are epic fantasy or epic sci-fi stories, right? Where you're immersed in this completely different universe, even if it's our own sort of universe in the future, right? Like most sci-fi tends to be,
right.
Like thousands of years into the future. You still sort of have to have a universe that's so rich in detail, and it has so many things that are similar, but so many things that are different from us, that you want to be in that universe, right? Like I love reading that stuff. I love watching that stuff. TV shows, reading books, comics, games, right? Like I love being in that. So for a writer to get to the point where they're able to craft this amazing world, they have to do what's called world building. And what that entails, if you're not familiar, is really sitting down and thinking about all the different aspects of a world, if you will, a universe, and really thinking about how all the different aspects are, like what kind of currency do they use? What is their day-night cycle? What's their language? What's their geography? What do they usually eat? What's farmland like? All of the nitty-gritty details, and seeing how they all interact with each other. And there's a lot that can go into it. You can get lost in creating this world. It's sort of like Sims on crack, or Conan Exiles, where you can really build it how you want to as you're the writer, right? You can make up whatever you want, but it also still has to make sense, right? Like you can't just be like, yeah, magic is real and it's unlimited and it has no consequence ever. Or maybe, sure, if that's the case, but then what does that world look like? Can you imagine a world where like everybody does magic, right? With no consequences, and it's unlimited resource, and it doesn't take away your mana or your faith or your whatever you want to call it. So you just have to think about that, and then what does that story entail, right? Like what's the story that you're trying to tell in that world? So anyways, there's a lot of stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. And it can be daunting as a writer to write anything, right? Much less something that is so in depth, right? Where do you even start? And there's things online now, thankfully, where you can go and get some resources to help you along. And one of these things are, of course, writers' workshops. And today we're going to talk about one in particular. Clarion West Writers' Workshop. It's in Seattle, Washington. And they have the longest running, most successful writing workshops in the world.
Oh, really? In the world?
Yeah, they're amazing, right? But there's a cost, obviously, right? Nothing is free.
To be best in the world, yeah, it comes with a price tag.
And George R.R. Martin,
I think I know that name. That's
some of you may know.
He might have written a book or two, right?
Yeah, he wrote a book or two.
Okay.
Yeah. Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin, or I should say, really, the Ice and Fire series. He wants to help one person actually secure a place at the Clarion West Writers Workshop so that they can have a leg up on world building. So he wants to, quote, help the next great fantasist on the long journey ahead. So he wants to sponsor a scholarship that covers tuition, fees, and lodging for an entire summer workshop, which is a few weeks in 2018. And obviously there's already scholarships and financial aid that is offered there, but right. Martin says, hey, you can never have too much help, which I agree, especially as a writer, right? Because when you're starting out, right, first you need to get sales. You need to get your name out there. Someone's got to read your books. You have to do all this marketing, all this PR for your own self if you don't have an agent, if you're not lucky enough to get an agent. So these workshops are a great tool not only to help hone your craft, but also networking.
Oh, yeah. And
be able to actually, not fluff up your resume, but, put something on your resume. Be like, hey, I took this workshop and it was amazing. And, it was sponsored by George R.R. Martin. So this is an amazing step. I love that he has put forth, this sponsorship for someone. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely sure with all of the details, and you can feel free to Google it if that's something you're interested in. Google it. How can you too apply for this? He just announced it recently, so I'm not sure even if he knows what the application process is right now. But it
will be for 2018, so this year.
Right, it's for the summer. So if you're interested in that, get on it. But I think that's amazing because world building is so important for creating something that wasn't there before.
Right.
In a way that is, it just spans so many different entertainment venues, right? Like I was mentioning, between video games, right? Like the world of Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah, it's in a way, potentially, no spoilers here, you know, maybe a future or past of our own. But it's a completely different world at the same time.
Yes.
Mass Effect, the Mass Effect genre.
Oh, yeah.
The Witcher series, right? Like all of that stuff. Somebody had to sit down and like build that world first on paper, maybe on a desktop, and had to ask themselves some questions. Now, if, you know, you don't think you can, you know, if you don't have certainly time to do this workshop, or you know, you're really, really, really at the very, very beginning, and maybe you're not even sure, like I am, of your writing talents / your world building talents, you can actually, if you go to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America organization online, it's sfwa.org. Patricia Reed actually wrote a amazing, very comprehensive list of questions that one should ask oneself when world building, and it's comprehensive. Like, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of questions. You know, she covers things like daily life, fashion, commerce, transportation, science and technology, medicine, social organization like government and politics, and the crime and the legal system, peoples and customs, magic, if you have magic, you know, physical and historical things like natural resources, the climate and geography, and so on and so forth. And again, all of these questions are not to say you have to answer all of them, but how do they pertain to your particular story? What, you know, and maybe just give you little sparks of inspiration onto like what you want to write about, but also like, oh wow, I never thought about that. Let me see how it can help. So there is also that there. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff online, but the fact that a writer with such high profile like Martin is going out into the world and saying, hey, I'm going to sponsor a writer who wants to create this fantastical new world for us in whatever form or fashion that might be. I want to sponsor them, and I want to give them the resources to get them there. I think is amazing. It's important because the arts in general tend to be pushed to the side, or like, oh well, you know, creativity is born within. You don't need to like go to school for it. And it's like, well, yes and no. I think that's awesome.
No, I completely agree. And actually what we'll do for chat too is we have some people in chat showing their interest, such as Great Natez, or Natez, I'm sorry if I'm messing up on the name there, says in chat, I've been fairly interested in starting world building as a new hobby. It's actually pretty cool you brought it up as a topic. So we'll make sure to share the website that we just mentioned. We'll share the link in the chat as well for all of you looking out there looking for interesting information on how to world build for your stories. And, you know, to go back into the topic, I absolutely agree, and I think it's fantastic. And George R.R. Martin actually makes a great point in the article where he says, for instance, you know, you may never have been to Paris, or you may never have been to Rome, but as soon as you hear those places, you can imagine the Colosseum, you can imagine the Eiffel Tower, and you know, if you say Egypt, you can imagine the pyramids, you can imagine the Sphinx, even if you were never face to face with it, never touched it, or anything like that. But you can still get that image. And writers do that, especially fantasy writers, science fiction writers. They constantly create images in our head. So let's say if there's a film that comes out, we go, yes, that is right on point. Or hell no, they were way off the mark. But we can actually clearly define that and say yes or no to these imaginary worlds that were never tangible to begin with. And that's amazing. And I think the other great thing about this is that there really aren't enough supporters of the arts. You know, back in like ancient Greece and in Roman times and so on and so forth up to the Renaissance, you know, you could get patrons. You would get the wealthy to help invest so that way you can do paintings, sculptures, storytelling, poems, plays, whatever it is that you do. And they would pay for that. They would help at least pay for your housing so that way you can create your artwork, you'd have food on your table, and you could put out your artwork and hopefully get paid from that then eventually down the line. And unfortunately, a lot of that's being taken away. And if we look at it too, some people say, well, there's plenty of governmental grants depending on the country you're in and blah, 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 blah. But the problem is, though, look at how many grants and how many different things there are for businesses, or how many options for getting investment there are for businesses. And people overlook the fact that the arts are also a business. You have a product that you create, no matter what kind of intent you have behind it. But you have this product that you need to put out into the world. So you need marketing, you need a publisher, you need someone who can publish that book out to the audience, and hopefully who can target the right demographic that you're trying to tell your story to. There are many people in this chain of creation in the long run, and this can also create jobs. This can also help vitalize certain industries in the economy by supporting these artists. But for some reason, they get so easily overlooked because they're not a business. They're not a business. They're not, into AI, or they're not doing the next big search engine or what have you. So whatever, it doesn't matter. But it does. And, if we look at, for instance, things like the sciences right now, at medical devices, if we look at certain vehicles, if we look at how certain bits of technology work, AI, for example, you know what? Most of the inventors of all of that, or the designers of all that, were inspired by shows like Star Trek, like Star Wars, lots of sci-fi, even some fantasy. So authors who had no idea how big of an impact their story had or would have has left their mark. And we have been able to progress as a society because of that creativity, because of that ingenuity of utilizing different ideas and concepts and being able to build off of it and create fantastical worlds. And even though they're not tangible now, we've been able to make them tangible or close to being tangible. And I think that's really important. And you can also look at the fact that artists overall, no matter the art form that you are involved with, you really are the voice of the people in many ways. Where people are too scared to talk about corruption or talk about their situation with their governments or relations with other countries or anything like that, these artists are the ones that speak out and help implement change. If you look actually just at the Spanish War alone, during their Civil War, there were huge issues they were going through, and the only real people who were sharing their thoughts and ideas were poets, were journalists, were playwrights. And they wrote plays, they wrote articles, they did everything they could to document this and share the voice of the people out, not just to their own country, but globally, so that other people knew what was actually going on. And many of them were hunted down and put into firing squads and were just killed because of that, because they were bringing the truth out. And so artists can be great truth tellers. Not just create fantastical worlds, but really tell a true story, put a mirror up to society and go, this is what you're doing. This is how we need to change, or these consequences could happen. And a lot of times it hits home a lot more because it doesn't feel as preachy as if someone says, well, don't do this, or you should go and do that. We get so involved in the story, it humanizes it, and then we make that connection. So I think that is the true power and the reason why we should be supporting more of the arts, and why this grant specifically is fantastic. And the fact that he's going out of his way to do this and say, here, I'm going to put up my own money to support someone, that says a lot, because not many people are willing to do that, especially in his position.
Right. Well, and, if you look at it too, it's like, what does he have to gain from it? Nothing, really. I mean, he's already famous, like...
Maybe to quell some of the angry people who are like, bring out the last damn book.
Oh, God. Just watch the show, guys. Just watch the show. I mean, the show at this point is so deviated from the books. But anyways, we digress. But yeah, no, it's true. Artists, I think, especially when given the freedom to build a different kind of world, can certainly comment on the actual world that we live in a way that gives them that freedom. For example, James S.A. Corey wrote the Expanse series, and those books are very much basically talking about what's happening in the world today without talking about what's happening in the world today, because it's set hundreds of years into the future. But you can clearly see, whether they did it on purpose or not, you can clearly see aspects of the politics and the economy and everything else that's very relevant to our lives today. They've put that in the books, and it's still relevant hundreds of years from now. And they weave an amazing story of political and human intrigue, a la Game of Thrones. So if you're into sci-fi, I'd highly recommend them. But yeah, and so you, as a writer, you can do that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, if you look at Shakespeare, too, as far back as Shakespeare, a lot of his commentary on politics and how things were run were always about England. They were always about England for the most part. But he'd always place it in Italy, or he'd always place it in Germany or France. So it was always another country so he could get away with it, especially as he was being funded by the crown anyway. If the crown really figured it out and put 2 and 2 together, they would have been like, wait a minute. But
this is just a story, guys. This is just a story. I don't know what you're saying.
It's fantastical. I don't know. It's fictional. Who cares? But he was able to get away with it, and that's the beauty of it too. Is that artists tell this story, and sometimes they're not too direct about it. But again, it still hits home. We still catch on as the reader and go, yeah, maybe I should rethink about how I hold myself as an individual. Or maybe I should question more things about how our countries ran. Or, again, anything and everything is possible. And, again, it just gets us thinking. It's more content out there that gets us thinking rather than spoon feeding us. Because that's really key, too.
Right. And again, it's not just writing a book, right? It's making a video game. It's creating a TV show. It's making a comic. Cartoons teach us things. There's certainly lots of political cartoons out there. They're like, ha ha ha, funny, and let's share this. But it's like, it's got some meat behind it. It's got some meat on its cartoony bones.
Yeah, even if you appreciate satire or not, places like The Onion, for instance, always have comical articles about things that are happening right now in reality, and it's in a very kind of satirical way, very kind of sarcastic way. But it hits home, and it's even more, I guess, engaging, especially if you know what they're talking about, So, things like that, even, we can't take it for granted. We're always surrounded by it in some way, whether it's satire, fantasy, absurdism. All these different elements come together and really help move us along a lot of times as a culture, whether we realize that or not.
What's your favorite world that someone's built? From writing, would you say? Or you don't have to have like a favorite, but like you have a few favorites.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say from video games. From books, there are several of, and I'm gonna get a little fantasy nerd on you guys.
Fantasy nerd alert.
But I do actually like some of the books from like R.A. Salvatore or Salvatore. Sorry if I butchered the last name. I read the last name. I never have to say it out loud. As well as a few others like Terry Goodkind and so forth. They seem to really do a good job of not only character building, but also of environment. So no, they're not like a Tolkien or anything like that. And especially the fact that I don't want to say Tolkien just because I've actually never read the books. I've only seen the movies, read the summaries. Yeah. Well, the man likes to talk. Let's put it that way. And I don't know if I'd have the patience to get through everything. But his worlds, from what I can tell, are incredibly rich as well. The detail of the maps that were created just for that world that I've seen. I'll say for video games, too, the world of The Witcher, for instance, the maps I've seen created of that and the story that's been told of that is very, very rich as well. So, it seems to be more of like in the fantasy realm as well. Not too much, for me at least, with sci-fi, but I know you have a lot of sci-fi, from collections of books that you've read and stories that you've gone through, or I'm sure you could list plenty on that end too. So what about you?
Yeah, I do prefer sci-fi. Well, I don't know, actually. I'm torn between sci-fi and fantasy. I love when I can get both from one story, as it were. But I would say that the world that, Whedon built in Firefly was incredible. And
going the film route. I didn't know we were going to film routes now.
I mean, it was a TV show, too.
Or TV show,
I mean, that's technically... Well, the TV show first, then they...
Serenity.
That was amazing because he wanted to combine the Western world feel, sort of that kind of explorer into the unknown, excitement of the West, as it were, and also the glamour of high sci-fi, where people have, foldable paper that is also basically your computer. And then, Besson with The Fifth Element, he created a fantastical world as well. And that was a long time ago that came out, and it still resonates with me. And then, of course, the most recently, the World of the Expanse from James S. A. Corey. They're so, like you were mentioning, there's so much detail that it almost feels really real. And that's really cool when that happens.
Now, one question I have for you too is, there are many stories that tend to change worlds or change time periods and so forth fairly quickly. So there was the film that came out by the Wachowskis, and I'm forgetting the name.
Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas, and that was originally a book beforehand.
Yes.
But that changes time periods and everything. What were your thoughts?
Characters, main character.
Yeah, what were your thoughts on that when it came to world building, considering they didn't have these long chunks of time to create it, but just kind of smaller chunks to hopefully create the world that should be rich enough for you, hopefully, right?
Oh, that's a good question. I saw the movie and I read the book. Or I should say I really tried to read the book. When the movie came out, I thought it was a magical idea. At the time, when I first kind of saw the trailer and everything like that, I didn't know that it was based on a book until I kind of did just a teeny bit of research. And so when I first heard about it, I was like, this is so cool. I couldn't tell what the fuck the movie was about, because it was like set in the past, set in the future. Now it's a guy, now it's a girl, now this person has tattoos, now this person's getting shot. Like, it was so much going on. I had no clue what the movie was even about. So that's when I did a little bit of research, and it was based on a book, and there's 6 different stories, I think. And they all, in the film at least, they all ran concurrently with each other. Mm-hmm. Sort of like we saw a quote chapter at a time type of thing. But in the book itself, it was done a little bit differently. The book started with one story, then it started another story, then another story, sort of like a babushka doll or Russian nesting doll. Like, you would open up the top, you'd open up the top, you'd open up the top, and then in the middle story continued on until the end. Then that story closed, and then they closed the other story just before it, and then they closed the other story just before it, and so on and so forth until you got to the end, which was the end of the beginning of the book. So that's how the book was structured. The film was more like, here's one story, here's another story, here's this story, here's this story, and then it would flip back and forth between scenes at seemingly random times and at random stories. So it wasn't always in order at all. But I thought it was beautifully done. They did, besides choosing, I thought, very interesting actors to play the characters. Because at first I was like, oh, this is weird, and I didn't, I'm not sure why this person's playing this character. But they actually reutilized characters in different stories as well. So then it made a little bit more sense. Like Halle Berry was a woman in one story, she was a man in another story, she was a different woman in another story, she was a main character in one story, she was not a main character in another story. That kind of utilization. So that just brought right there way more layers to the story, and then the message of that the author had originally tried to convey in a way that the book itself couldn't even do. But the book utilized a different methodology of sort of inserting you into the world, into the different worlds, and that was how it was written. So every story was written very differently. It was like one story was very heavy with like the language of the people, and it made it hard to read the language because the author wrote it how they talked it. Like that's when I gave up, because I'm like, I cannot figure out what this person is saying anymore. I just don't know. And then other ones were written, other stories were written like somebody was recounting their life story. Another one was written as a sensualized drama piece. Like, it was all very different. And again, in the film, you sort of saw that difference as well. They tried to be true to it. But at the same time, they used other things like, oh, this person, this actor here, this actor here. highly enjoyable movie. But to back to your actual question, you know, I thought they did a really good job of, in just both the book and the film, in just the first kind of opening scene or the opening paragraph, you knew you were in a different place because of the way that it was either written or the decor, what people were wearing, how they were talking, you know. And you did, I thought, immediately got the sense of, oh, I'm in this type of world, this is what's happening, this is where we're at. It was amazing. They put a lot of thought into all the details in the film, and then in the book, again, it was hard to get to because it was so different, but it felt like you were reading 6 different books.
I gotcha.
Essentially, by like 6 different authors. So that was cool. It was like some books I'm like, I like the story, but I don't like the way that it was written. Like, for me, it didn't jive, you know.
So basically, if you're a person who has commitment issues with finishing a story or making it long enough, this book is perfect for you, because you'll look at it and go, damn, I wish I would have thought of that idea this whole time.
Yes.
Okay, I got you. And that's always important too, is to look at the examples that we have now and truly like break it down and go, oh yeah, these things do have an impact, whether it's telling a story, whether it's kind of helping us understand relationships with each other, or the breakdown of communication between one person or another. I mean, there's just so many things that you can talk about and make it engaging. And that's where good, strong writers flourish.
And I think that's where fan fiction comes from too. If you believe, if you create a world that's so believable that people want to like then jump in and kind of make their own stories in there. I think that's that's another criteria that you can judge good world building on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Star Wars, for instance. And when Disney said, well, we're not going to use anything that the other people have written, you know, like the fan fiction, we're going to ignore all that. We're going to ignore everything in the books. People were outright pissed. And I've never seen so many people so vehemently pissed off at something, unfortunately in some respects, depending on the topic, but so pissed off on something as I did with Star Wars, where as soon as Disney announced that, they're like, no, pump your brakes. This is still part of canon. This is still part of the world because they're so rich, and we have relied on them because the lack of content that has come out otherwise, right? And so there were all these loose stories and all this potential, but no one was really jumping on it, so the fans jumped on it. And so I think it's only fair that you do include it. And, you know, that shows right there the type of world that was created from something like Star Wars. People could just basically jump in the car and just start driving it right away. And I think, like you said, that shows a great world builder. Or at least, you know, the potential of a great world builder. And also, talking about world builders, or talking about fantastical things, going on to our next topic, Elon Musk and flamethrowers.
Dun, dun, dun.
AKA, why do we keep buying stupid shit from insanely wealthy people? I read this article, and you're going to get me semi-unfiltered. I will try to, you know, I'm always authentic, but, you know, I try not to say certain things about specific people. But I might have to throw down a little bit here, because this is my thing. Before we go into the story. Elon Musk has done a lot of great things, whether you agree with him or not, right? He bought out and promoted and pushed Solar City, so that way hopefully we are more reliant on solar energy rather than fossil fuels. He's been pushing Tesla cars, which again, going toward better environment, getting away from fossil fuels, getting away from things that have been proven to push us further into global warming. He's been looking into SpaceX and developing rockets. So that way maybe we can have civilizations out in space and on Mars and you know, everywhere else. And he's been doing a lot of great things, honestly, that most people don't want to try to take on. Or he's done a lot of great things where the funding kept getting stripped away from the government departments that are supposed to be behind things like this. Like, for instance, the support for NASA. They've gotten a bunch of things canceled and a bunch of money pulled from them to go to other things like war, small little things like that. We're in 7 of them right now, 7 different wars, if you will, all throughout the globe. Look it up. Pretty interesting.
If you add all of them up, does it make World War III or?
I mean, it's getting pretty close. So, with that said, though, he has done a lot of great things. This thing now is probably one of the most dumb fucking things I have ever heard this man do, and I think, in some respects, this man has gone batshit fucking crazy. That's just me, though. So, if you don't know, Elon Musk runs a company called The Boring Company. That sounds funny, right? It's boring. No, legitimately, it's boring into the ground. His goal, as the owner of this specific company here, is to basically make an underground tunnel, kind of like the Big Dig in Boston, and make it so that way there are highways under the ground or pathways under the ground for people to travel, so people in California don't have to deal with the insane traffic that we have here, where it would maybe take you like 10-15 minutes to get to somewhere, it takes you 45 to over an hour, depending on traffic conditions, depending on the temperature and weather, depending on just all the other crazy factors that happen because of us human beings behind a wheel. So with this, at first he was selling, for the Boring Company, he was selling hats. More specifically, he was selling, let's see here if I can find it. He was selling these hats that just said basically The Boring Company over it. And he said if he sold a certain amount, he would start selling flamethrowers. Now, of course, it's like, oh, haha, funny. And why is he selling hats in the first place? I don't know. But
we all need goals.
He is now meeting up with his promise of selling flamethrowers. So in a video post on Instagram, Musk said, "Don't do this," and then proceeded to run towards the camera with the flamethrower alit. Also, I want to be clear that a flamethrower is a super terrible idea. Definitely don't buy one unless you like fun.
Unless you like fun.
So he's saying that the thing that he's selling does terrible things and can do terrible things, but you're not fun or cool if you don't have one. Okay. Moving on, he says, obviously a flamethrower being a terrible idea, but by Monday afternoon, customers had reserved 10,000 of the 20,000 units the company planned to produce. They each cost $500 a piece. Yeah, $500 a piece for something that juts out flame. I mean, you could basically, mind you, get like a little aerosol can, fill it up, spray it into a lighter, and you basically have a flamethrower.
Oh, kids, don't try this at home.
So don't try it at home. I'm just saying, you get some Axe body spray and a lighter, and you're good for at least an hour before you burn your damn house down. Let alone now, you can buy a freaking flamethrower from a guy who's like, hey, we need to save civilization. We have to help humankind. We have to improve our world. So let's load up everyone with a freaking flamethrower. That it's just mind-boggling at how stupid this is. Let alone the fact that, if you think about it, again, everything that he's done has been supposedly for like the betterment of humankind, the better of the planet, especially. Right. Mm-hmm. That's been that push. But what should I say? What fuels a flamethrower?
Love and butterflies?
Yeah, or potentially butane and other gases and stuff that you can then ignite. Well, guess what? One, in order to obtain these gases, you have to do things to the earth that, well, ruin it. Secondly, as soon as you light up these gases, the gases get emitted into the air, which again contributes to more global warming. So you're doing all these different things to promote the earth, to promote the fight against global warming, but then you're selling this dumbass product that you don't need to be selling, which actually goes against everything else you've been pushing. Now, mind you, people will say, well, he's a wealthy dude. He doesn't give a crap about anyone. Which, I mean, I would agree with you to a point, right? Like, I was right there originally with everyone on that mention. I thought, well, he's a wealthy dude. He doesn't care about smaller people, but he sees the investment in it and the money potential. But then he kept pushing and creating more industries and more ways of ideally helping humankind. And I thought, okay, maybe this is like the one guy, the one person who hasn't fully been kind of taken over by money. And then I see this, and I see the video on Instagram, and I'm just like, okay, he's lost his shit. And, it's funny because on Twitter, Musk noted that the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF, decrees that any flamethrower with a flame shorter than 10 feet, mind you, I don't want to freaking deal with a flame that's 9 feet, so I don't give a damn if it's less than 10 feet. I don't want to see a 6-foot flame. I don't want to see a 7-foot flame near me. I don't want to see an 8 or 9-foot flame near me.
That's as tall as you are. It's longer than you are.
Yes, I'm 6'4". That damn flame is taller than I am. I mean, we're talking about taller than basketball players here, folks. If this helps give a concept of how big these flames get, or the image that you see on the screen now, these things get freaking big. And I just don't understand why, even if it is supposedly legal, there's not people willingly going around and mass producing and promoting it like he is. So there aren't people just going out and buying it. And you know that the bulk of people here, and maybe I just sound jaded and lack of trust in humankind, I don't know, but the bulk of people are going to be like, hey, let's see what else we can burn. And they're going to freaking do it. They're not going to go out and just be like, oh, well, I'm going to just start barbecues with this, which why the hell do you need a flamethrower?
I want my meat charred, please.
Yeah, I'm just going to flambe my own food with a freaking flamethrower. Somebody throw that on. But he said, the Boring Company said fire extinguishers, by the way, were sold separately for an exorbitant amount of money. So they're just playing around with the whole fact. Like, they don't give a shit. And somehow this I don't give a shit attitude is making it sell, which, yeah, I get the idea, right? The original appeal of like, dude, I could freaking buy a flamethrower and it's popular. All right, cool, But the usage of it, like, let's be real here. There's no need for a flamethrower, 1. 2, people are going to do such stupid shit with it. And that's my soapbox. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I just don't understand who these people are that buy stuff like this. And let me put this into context. I mean, Kanye West sold a plain white t-shirt. He sold a plain white t-shirt. That's it. For $120.
Yep.
And people bought it. I mean, what the fuck? Like, really, I don't have a lot of what the fuck moments. But people are buying a t-shirt for $120. It's just white. That's it. It's not made out of gold. It's not made out of silver. And just because Kanye West is selling it. And I'm like, what has Kanye West done for humanity? Sure, he wrote some cool songs and whatnot. He's also, no, what? Why are you giving him more money? And so, again, going back to what Evin said, Elon Musk has done some cool stuff for us, for humanity already. So, he's got some brownie points already up there, But I just don't understand this either. It's like he just did a 180 or something. like, okay, let's save the world. Climate change, blah. Oh, you guys want to create some fires out into the world? We got you covered. We got flamethrowers. Oh, also, let me run around my office with it, because that's not fucking creepy at all.
And that is what he does, too, in the video. He actually does run at the camera with the flame, stops just before he gets to the person. The person legitimately actually started running backwards because they were actually a bit scared of what the hell he was
frightened out of their fucking mind, probably.
And he's just laughing like a maniacal, evil villain. Like, he just created, like, this ray gun that'll, like, disintegrate you into ashes, like in frickin' Warner Brothers or something, like one of those old school cartoons. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on right now?
And there's already people who think that he's already a little like, woohoo. So, don't give him any more fodder, Elon. Come on. There's also this whole thing about, if you're in the public eye and you have such a wide reputation, like, people watch you, right? People read you, people buy your shit. Like, you got to be careful about what you put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And saying something ridiculous, like, oh, if I sell 20,000 hats, I'm gonna start selling flamethrowers. Like, just know. Like, why are you... It's one thing when you're, going live and you're saying something stupid in the heat of the moment. Not that I excuse those people either. But okay, fine. You're live streaming. It happened. You can't edit yourself out. Too bad, right? But for you to then, like, mass produce something, like, you're taking it to the next level, right? I don't know. I'm appalled. And maybe it's a publicity stunt.
I mean, it's a hell of a publicity stunt. And the thing is, it's from the company that's all about boring pathways under the ground. So what a flamethrower has to do with it doesn't make any sense. And I mean, even in this article that we've gotten this information from, it says within hours, customers had placed orders for 7,000 flamethrowers, which at $500 each works out to be $3.5 million. The company had stock of 20,000. Already that quickly, 7,000 were sold. They made $3.5 million to show basically how stupid some people are and how willing they are to eat up stuff. And, if you're one of those people, I'm not sorry for saying you're an idiot.
Watch out. They're going to have a flamethrower and coming after you.
Yeah, they'll have a flamethrower chasing after me, so it's okay. What is it? Flame beats rock or paper or something in the paper, rock, scissors flamethrower match.
I feel like flame would be just almost about anything.
But seriously, though, and then it's like what you mentioned with the Kanye West, where it's like, well, it's a white t-shirt from Kanye West. Well, he designed it. Well, I mean, he maybe okayed it, but it's just got his name on it. Yeah, but
it doesn't even have anything on it. Nothing.
Well, no, but I mean, it's got his name on it, like on a tag or something. But like, it's associated with his brand. But like $120 for that, and yet we eat it up. And yet we are not, and this is the other big problem. I bet you we know at least one person who is either an artist and a damn good dedicated artist, or who is an entrepreneur with an amazing idea for a business, and most people will refuse them $1. We'll refuse them $1, but we will invest $120 into a white t-shirt or $500 into a flamethrower. And as soon as people realize that this is going to sound a little tinfoily, but I don't care. As soon as we stop being these freaking consumeristic puppets, the better off our lives are going to be. Because honestly, you can yell and complain about businesses and their practices, but nothing is going to change until you hit them where it hurts, which is their pocketbook. You stop giving them money, oh, it's amazing how much of a 180 they'll do. They will flip on the turn of a hat and go, so, we really listen to our customers, and we realize that, we shouldn't be doing this. I mean, if you want to bring it on to video games, because we are on Twitch, what about EA, Electronic Arts, when they came out with Star Wars Battlefront 2? They were like, oh, by the way, there are loot boxes, and these loot boxes greatly impact the gameplay. So what happened? People went, no, screw you, I'm not buying your game. And they wrote articles about it, and it really hit mainstream, and it got to the point where EA went, okay, so we're just going to take away the loot boxes for now. We want to listen to the people because, it's the audience, it's the gamer, it's the player that's really important.
Right.
Because we're not getting money.
Yeah. Wah, wah.
Exactly. So it's like, you got to hit them where it hurts, which is the pocketbook. You can't keep buying this stupid shit. I don't care who it's from. I don't care if it's from Elon Musk. I don't care if it's from, Mahatma Gandhi comes back from the dead and starts selling bazookas. I'm not going to buy one. Not that he would, but the way this world's going, anything's possible.
What if Jesus starts selling his wine?
We all getting crunk tonight. Yeah. But seriously, though, I mean, just looking at the numbers of sales is insane. The fact of, like, who needs a flamethrower? Yeah. Plus, it's like, it doesn't even mention about, like, how do you fuel the thing? How do you take care? Like, none of that. It's just, like, the cool factor. And that's how it's being pushed. And honestly, that's negligence. And I think that should be illegal when it comes to marketing. When you're pushing something like that and going, oh, well, you're not cool. You're not having fun if you don't have one. Look at how much fun we are having, especially in the office with a fucking flamethrower.
I'm surprised that nothing got, like, caught on fire.
Oh, it's not like we would know, right?
Right.
Like,
well, yeah,
really
they're not going to post that on Instagram, but,
Hey, look, my intern's hair is on fire.
If you work at Elon Musk's company and you were there for that, let us know. what really happened.
You
Okay,
will
we'll
remain
protect you.
anonymous, and we will just be like, an anonymous source came to us. A bird came tapping at our window, hopefully not with a fucking flamethrower, and let us know about what was going on.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. I don't know. I guess people just want to belong or something. And so they're like, I'll just give my money to anybody because, like, I want to be part of the cool kids. Or they're so rich that they literally have nothing else that they can buy. And this is new.
It's true. And I think a lot of these purchases, those are the initial people that purchase it.
Oh, yeah. Like, I have a shit ton of money. I bought everything already. Let me at it.
Yeah, many of these people aren't laggards within the purchasing cycle.
Right.
You know, they're up in the forefront because they want to be first because, hey, look at me. I have this thing. I'm going to then post on Instagram and, you know, talk to all my friends about it. But yeah, then eventually it comes down to us. And for whatever reason, you know, middle class and whatnot, all the working class, for some reason, tend to eat it up. And it's like, stop doing that.
Bad.
It's like, you're not going to see that money again. There is no major positive impact that this thing can bring your life. Just stop. And I feel like, you know, it's we all need like that personal bartender to like take your keys and be like, you need to stop drinking. You're not driving home right now. You're too fucked up. Sit in the corner, listen to some really bad Mariah Carey, and shut up, okay? We need that in our lives because evidently people cannot be trusted with that stuff. They cannot just go, you know, maybe this is really stupid. I shouldn't do it. No, it's like that part of the brain turned off.
It's like, give me your wallet. No, give it. Okay, sit. And then you just run away with your credit cards.
Exactly.
And you buy yourself a bunch of white t-shirts from Target.
Yeah. $5 a piece, folks. It's on sale. It's great. Target, if you're looking for, you know, sponsor.
I don't think they want. Nah, I think they're good.
Not,
I think Target's good. Nah, that's good. Well, to continue on the wow factor, across the world, in China, researchers cloned 2 monkeys. Boom.
Monkey
mic drop.
see and monkey do.
Zhongzhong and Huahua, otherwise known as ZZ and HH. So sort of. I mean, yeah, you could nickname them that if you want. Zhongzhong and Huahua.
So we have see no evil, speak no evil. We're just missing the third monkey in that. You ever seen that? The Buddhas or the monkeys and they're doing that? Yeah,
I know. Yeah. So they were born from surrogate mothers using a process known as somatic cell nuclear transfer, or SCNT. Scent. I'm going to go with scent. We're going to call it scent for short. And it's the same process that, well, of course, was used to clone Dolly the sheep in 1996. So right. This is nothing revolutionary in terms of cloning per se, because we've been cloning people, or not people. We've been cloning animals, everyone.
Other animals.
Now, if you're not familiar with what scent is, as I'm sure most of us aren't, in these procedures, the nucleus of a cell is taken from anywhere in the animal's body and placed within an egg, but it has its own DNA material removed. And so they call that egg enucleated oocyte. For those of you who are, you know, biologists and whatnot, I'm sure you guys are like, oh yeah, I think I would know. But the eggs then are stimulated to form the embryos, and they're then placed in a surrogate womb where they are brought to pregnancy. So that's the method, right? And primates have also been cloned before. That was in 1999. A rhesus macaque named Tetra was a primate that had been cloned before. But Zhongzhong and Huahua are the first primates cloned using this particular method that was also used on Dolly the sheep. So, you know, of course, now everyone's like, again, oh my God, how close are we to cloning humans? Can I get someone to go to school for me or what? Can I get someone to send them to work, right? And the nuances in the ethics related to human cloning, you know, tend to make the issue a little bit more complicated. We're at the top of the food chain and whatnot. And, you know, in some circles, right, the question is less can we and more like should we potentially. For example, this experiment that did, bring Zhang Zhang and Hua Hua into life, failed a lot of times. So there was like multiple surrogates. They had hundreds of eggs, like numerous pregnancies, and most of them actually failed.
Oh yeah, and there were actually 2 other ones that were born around the same time or a little bit before, and they actually died 2 days later.
Exactly. So, if you kind of take that same cloning success and try to transfer that to human experiments, right? That's you can kind of see where the trouble might be, right? They actually used like 63 surrogates. They had like 30 pregnancies. So, I mean, that number is astronomical just to get 2 live births that actually the animals, the clones, that's the word. The clones didn't actually, they actually survived for more than just a few days. And there's also this other thing that some people say that there's no real proof of this, and some researchers are like, no, here's the proof. But there's some developmental anomalies. One of them, most prominently called the large offspring syndrome, are known to occur in cloned animals, which affect the quality of life, the lifespan. It's basically they're just like the resulting offspring just are just a little bit bigger than normal. Which is interesting to even think about, like, why does that happen? But that, of course, can affect a lot of things, because let's say the mother isn't developed to carry to term something that's larger than normal, that kind of thing, right? Like, that has an impact on that too. So there's a lot of those things. But there's a lot of research out there. You can kind of find people on both sides of the cloning debate, if you will, that will have proof one way or the other, right? So it's hard to determine what is actual truth, right? But if you just stop and think about the things that they do agree on, which are more factual in terms of how many surrogates, how many pregnancies, how many live births, how many have issues, how many don't have issues, how many survive, et cetera, you can then get a better understanding that cloning isn't, it's not cut and dry yet. It's not, yes, we can do it. Yes, let's just jump right on it. Look how easy and safe it is, right? Because it's not. So, my questions, certainly whenever I hear the topic of cloning or watch a movie about it or read a book about it, is I just don't understand why we're so obsessed with it, right? Like, instead of trying to maybe preventatively cure some things or not make our bodies break down early, or preventative measures. Let's put preventative measures instead of getting to a point where you're so sick and let's say you need your cloned organs to survive. Like, why are we so obsessed with, let's just grow something new and replace it, right? Like, let's just buy another smartphone because this one broke. Like, why can't we just focus on fixing the thing that's broken, right? Because there's proponents of cloning, of course, that are like, we can harvest organs, we can cure Alzheimer's, we can cure all this stuff and this and this and that. And it's like, that's great and all and wonderful. But then maybe let's not look at cloning like entire beings, and let's take a look at growing organs by themselves. Or, if that's kind of like where you're going at.
Well, the big thing too, at least with the organs bit of it, is the fact that there are people who are waiting in super long lines, like waiting lists basically, for a new kidney or for, some kind of replacement of some sort of organ. And a lot of times there's just not enough people who donate, or, they could have a rare condition or a rare circumstance where they need something very specific, and it's just super hard to find. And I think that's the huge benefit, is instead of having these people basically wait to die and then eventually die without ever getting that new organ, something can be created from their tissues, from their, whether it's stem cells or whatever cells they tend to pull, and create something anew. And I think that's huge, especially for people who, for instance, are on dialysis and they need a new kidney. Well, now you don't have to pay absorbent amounts for the rest of your life for dialysis. You don't have to worry about the pain and the annoyance of sitting there on a machine while you wait for potentially getting a kidney. They can create one for you. And I think maybe, and again, this is just off the top of my head, my thinking on it, and I'd like to look in to see about the true facts behind it, but I almost feel like it's easier to be able to clone and create within a sterile environment rather than try to put things into you to slow down or prevent something, if that makes sense. Like if your kidney is already damaged, it's hard to try to repair it while it's still in the body, but they can't just rip it out because you need your kidney, right? I mean, you can live off of one kidney, but not very well. The life is not great. So, you know, they need that kind of sterile, protected environment where they could create something. I feel like that's the importance of it. I'm guessing. Now, I could be wrong on this, but those are my thoughts on that, at least.
Right, that makes sense. It's sort of like if something's wrong with the engine of a car, like, sure, you can try to fix the engine inside the car, but maybe sometimes it's just easier to just take that engine out and put a new engine in. Good to go.
Right, yeah.
Perfect fit. Here we are.
And the cost for a person, too, might actually be more down the line if they try to constantly prevent and repair rather than just replace. Depending. I mean,
and, you know, I guess to, in a way, play devil's advocate, if you will. Again, back to what I was kind of, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, you know, instead of trying to find a fix for something that's already broken, my whole thing is, well, why don't we just, like, put that energy and that effort into educating people, changing lifestyles, providing them with good stuff that makes it so that things don't break. You know, like, let's not wait until the engine in the car is dead. Let's take it for regular checkups. Let's
change the oil. Let's get fluids into it properly.
Exactly.
Let's make sure it's running and it's clean and smooth. And
right. I mean, that's obviously, you know, it's easier to pay for something to get fixed when it's broken than try to maintain it over time, right? That's definitely a truth to some degree. And we're all lazy. But I think, you know, to me, I think the benefits of cloning, at least at this point, knowing about human nature and knowing how corporations like to squeeze all of our money that we have, pharmaceutical industry, to me, it's like it's just opening up another Pandora's box. Like, she's got two boxes now. She's got the drugs to fix you up, and now she's got, oh, it's cool, these don't work. We'll just replace the organ altogether. Well, and it's sort of like how you know, I read a long time ago that, you know, the companies aren't interested in curing cancers or terminal diseases or diseases that they can at least just instead have you pay them to help manage it so you're not fully dead. Because if you're fully dead, they don't get any money. And if you're cured, they don't get any money. But if you're kind of like just hanging in there, right, they get money. And I know that's sort of a cynical viewpoint, but I don't know. I guess, you know, human nature is still going to be human nature, and until we work to sort of fix that in a way, it's going to be hard for something like cloning not to go down the bad path if it becomes mainstream.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think every topic that we talk about, too, there is a positive and a negative to it. You know, so many of these things are tools that it's really dependent on the people wielding them, on what they do, on what happens, what is the outcome. And I think the important thing, though, is to make sure to separate some of that as well and keep a little bit of buffer there and know that, well, cloning inherently doesn't mean that it's morally wrong or that there's, you know, anything horrible about it, but
right.
that bad things could happen based on the people wielding the control over said cloning. Just as we were talking about the flamethrowers. Not everyone is going to be a dipshit with a flamethrower, but there are many people out there that will end up burning your house down.
Or their house down.
Or their own house down. Typically, it starts with their own house and then your house if you laugh at them.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, first it's their house and then they're coming for ours.
They're coming for me.
But you know, so it's all about wielding it. But I think that sense of cloning is a good concept in a way. And it is intriguing, though, on how we're so caught up on the sense of creation, though. You know, for instance, if you look at 3D printing and the popularity of that, it's amazing what we can do with it, and we can do great things with it. We can build homes for the homeless for less than $1,000, basically, and give them some place to live and survive in for the next 100 years, basically. You know, it's amazing what we can do that's inexpensive, that helps benefit people. And we always seem to want to find that new way of creating something. And I think in some way, though, that's not a bad thing, because then you say, too, well, then why are there authors? They create stories. Why are there, you know, people who are entrepreneurs? They create businesses. You know, I think just the sense of creation overall, no matter what it is innately built into us. We have that curiosity and that drive because I think for many people, it is inherently good and you can see the benefit. But then as soon as someone else steps in that has more money, that's when shit hits the fan and things tend to change.
Right, or when somebody wants to exploit the system for their own gain. Of course. Wardy in chat says that you guys have seen The Island, right? That's how I see the cloning situation going, to be honest. And yeah, me too. Like, eventually, it's just going to be, spoilers alert for anybody who still wants to see The Island. Scarlett Johansson, Ewan McGregor. It's a good film. You know, you're going to have the people who have money who are going to exploit the system in a way that is not beneficial for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, and then kind of back to my sort of original point, you know, unless you're just cloning organs just by themselves, like with stem cell, you know, growths and all that stuff, but you're trying to do like an entire being, like,
yeah,
like
and
what?
And I think that's the factor there.
You're getting into some moral gray area.
It's like there's a line between a whole person and a person's arm, a person's heart, a person's kidney. You know, we already kind of do that as is, though, right? Like, we are always, you know, putting something into someone to help them improve their quality of life, whether it's a prosthetic, whether it's a heart monitor, or, you know, anything like that, any kind of medical device. You know, that isn't naturally born or created, but we use those willingly, too, to help elongate our lives. And, you know, something that gets me, and it'll probably irk some people, but, you know, again, this is all about being genuine here, so I'm going to.
It's all right. We've irked all of the people with our show
We've pissed off people who have flamethrowers, so at this point, bring it. But just at our door, hello, we heard something about a barbecue.
Don't you be talking about our flamethrowers, motherfuckers. And they'll be 10 feet away because that's the legal flame size.
Little less than 10 feet.
We're good. We're good.
So, you know, I feel like, personally, that, what do I want to say? That the creation of it, it isn't a bad thing. And that people say, well, it's against nature. It's against, you know, my belief system or, you know, philosophy to try to recreate something. Because basically it's like you're playing God. But then at the same time, then, why do you wear glasses? That's a technological advancement. You weren't born with glasses. They weren't given to you. And again, I know these are loose. You know, it's not like my glasses have life, right? Or cells or anything like that. So I get there as a line here. But if we really think about it, we've talked about this before, about technological advancements and how we're basically already cyborgs. Again, we have so many medical devices inside of us a lot of the times to help correct certain things. We have a fake hip. We have a fake shoulder. My grandmother, seriously, she did line dancing for years. She was a nurse. She was always on her feet. She's had more surgeries than the Bionic Man, okay? And, you know, she's come back stronger, faster, all of that.
And she's funny, too.
It's a
humor.
Runs in the family. Check. But she has, like, fake everything, basically, at this point. I mean, elbows, shoulders, knees, hips, you name it, she's had it replaced. Those weren't born in her, though, and those aren't biological. So if anything, at least the concept of cloning certain parts of the body should actually be better in a way. I mean, we're already altering ourselves, we're already altering our life, we're already altering, if you will, the path that you may feel a certain deity may have for you. So it's like, well, why say for one thing it's bad, but for another it's not? And I feel like most of the time, too, most people don't say anything positive about something until it impacts them, and then they're like, oh no, this is great, like I freaking love this thing. Wait, wasn't it you like a month ago who said no, this is horrible? Yeah, but I need a freaking heart, so if they can clone a heart, then I'm gonna freaking take it. Yeah, but didn't you just say that this was a...
Well, we all know that, circumstances are fluid in their perception, or in how you perceive them, depending on how they impact you. Because if it's not in your back door, whatever. Oh, it's a big catastrophe 2 states down. That's cool. Whatever. It happens in your backyard. You're like, why does nobody come to help? Why is nobody donating? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just think it, for a quality of life perspective. And again, yes, I think there are moral lines in the sense of cloning a whole person. I do. Because, in fact, it is another life, right? It is another being, even though it's identical to another person. If you especially put them in different environments and separate them and they don't have the same type of education or anything else, then they are going to be fairly different in a way too. Genetically, they will be equivalent, but there are other factors that come into play too. And so, if it is true that them as a clone will impact their health, their mental stability, and other factors, then you are setting someone up, and really a person up for failure and for potential death. And do we want to put that onto someone? And I think that's the true question, but it gets lost among everything else that people tend to throw at this topic.
Well, and Wardy brings up another good point, and it's something that I've been thinking about. There's a lot of talk about, it's okay if we clone animals, but humans, hold up, right? Self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Is that where the line needs to be drawn? And I want to say, aren't the animals technically sort of kind of self-aware too?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of vegans and people who would say exactly that the animals are self-aware. They might not have the longest term memory as we do, let's say, or anything like that, but they still have feelings, they still have emotions. They still go through similar things that we do. I mean, there's no different from our pet dog in comparison to let's say a sheep that you would then cook up. Again, you look at one as a pet, one as an animal that you eat, but yet they're all animals in the long run. But they all have that self-awareness. They all have that emotional connection, and they do have this kind of structure of parent and offspring, and that innate reaction to take care of said offspring. So us testing on them is, I would say, in many respects, no better than humans anyway, if we're going with that.
Yeah, and so as far as I'm concerned, fuck it, let's do it on humans. I don't know. Like, we're doing it on animals, what's the difference, right? And there's, at some point, where do you even judge what safe would be for experimenting on humans? It's like, look, if somebody wants to go in there and try to have themselves cloned, go for it, right? It's a good question, right? Well, and I think, some of... Okay, well, I guess the issue isn't necessarily for the person getting cloned, but it's for the clones that result from it, and what is their quality of life. But look at live births from regular reproduction, right? There's plenty of things that can go wrong.
And that's very true, too.
Right? And then kids get born, and they're not 100% what they should be, at least biologically. What do we do with them, right? Like, we take care of them, right? So clones wouldn't be any different.
Well, and in a way, too, we're already taking the egg and sperm of a couple and putting it into someone else.
Right.
If the female in that relationship is not able to give birth, they have someone do it for them. So in a way, we're already kind of manipulating and kind of crossing lines in a way that some people are like, well, no, clones would push it over. But it's like, we're already doing a lot of different stuff that already that in a way should be already crossing your boundaries there for that, but yet no one's really creating as much of an uproar.
Right.
And I'm not saying they should, but just that's the facts of it. There's so many things already happening and that have happened in this world, and yet they're picking this one thing going, no, be it everything else. Well, I mean, it's okay because it impacts me, and I would do something like this, but I'm not going to clone myself.
So let's say we're in the future, or like 30, 50, 60 years from now,
30, 50 is 60 years from now?
Yeah, it's a range.
Oh, you mean 30 to 50 years from now or something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. In 3050, which is only 60 years away. What the fuck year is it
In
again?
the year 3050.
What did I miss?
And you one of your organs, God forbid, fails, and there's cloning available, would you do it?
Clone me up, Scotty.
Oh, we have a yes from Evin.
Let's do this. Let's rock this shit out. Like,
What if they have to first, like in the island, create a person first, create a you?
I mean, if it, and that's a good question. One, they wouldn't have to create a full person, depending on what it is. I mean, they're already creating hearts and other things within closed-in environments that is just that based off the cells. So it really is dependent. It would have to be something crazy. But let's say if that was the situation and it involved the death of that clone.
I'm putting you on the spot.
I see this. I am experiencing this right now as we speak. It's an interesting question, right? Because it's like, even with the clone, technically you don't have an emotional connection with it. At least I feel like in a way you don't. For some, at least, because it's just like, well, it's a part of me, whatever, and then, you know, it's like a, but I don't know, like a wart or something, like a removal, and then they do something with it. I guess it's a good question, because it's like you're killing off part of yourself, but at the same time, it's like, but you survive, you live on. But then if you know the fact that there are emotions attached to this thing and this person and whatnot, yeah, it's an interesting debate. It's one that I'd have to have more time on, because it's something I've never really, I had to think about. And I think it's a fair statement. But then again, it's also, well, yeah, what is the lifespan of this clone? Because if I can get 50 more years, and I'm not saying if I knew about this all in advance that I would be like, hell yeah. But, like if this clone that I find out has like 2 years to live, and I have 2 days,
You're
but
like,
I have...
Fuck the clone.
I mean, in a way, yeah. It's like, if I can get 20 years more life, and I'm not saying just me in general, but looking at lifespan, and if you really try to weigh things out, I have 20 more years to try to do something good in the world. That's at least my ideal goal. Now, not everyone thinks like that. Everyone's just like, well, fuck the rest of the world, whatever, I don't care.
Or like, I want 20 more years to play with flamethrowers.
Yeah, I want 20 more years to see what else I can burn down. I don't know. I mean, again, it varies on the person. And I think, again, there are all these tools, but it depends on who wields it.
Ooh.
What is their intent? If their intent is just to live longer, to keep screwing over everyone else, then, I mean, that's one thing. But if you really do want to put out some good out there and have a positive impact on society, and you got 20 more years to do it, rather than 2 days or 2 years like this clone, I mean, you weigh it out, it's like, for the betterment of things, then yeah, I would probably take it. Again, thinking off the top of my head.
So criminals, no clones. If you're an innocent person, good to go.
Well, not if you're just innocent person. Like, I think we should do some IQ tests. I feel like there should be IQ tests to be a parent. I mean, there are some people that should not be parents. We've all seen this, okay? We've all been to certain department stores or whatever, and we've seen people who are like, no. The fact that you procreated and no. So, there is that factor too, right? Like, especially if we think of this clone as another person. What is this person like? If they are mentally unstable, like, I don't want to create another Charles Manson. I'm okay with not doing that. I'm okay with not creating another Ted Bundy or, someone else of that caliber. But again, if they're great people and, they can bring some society, there's a debate there. There's a discussion there. So that's another factor, personally. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a heavy topic. I think that if clones were really right, like what you were saying, it's that self-awareness, but also more than just self-awareness, but really like sentient. Like, I think I'd prefer my clone to be in a way brain dead, and it's just a vessel for the things that I need. Like, and they're not being let run loose in some compound until they're needed and they have lives and whatnots, but rather they're just literally, in some sort of like tube of water that's like keeping them well hydrated and ready to go, but they're not.
How very Matrix of you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, like that, like made. But even though they
were alive.
They were
though.
alive.
They had,
That's another. But But yeah, just, I guess, brain dead. At that point, they really are just an organ donor of some sort. I think that I would mostly be okay with that. On the other hand, again, I just, it's like, I get it, I didn't take care of my body, or I'm so old that my body is failing me, and that's this and that. But it's like, sometimes it's also okay to let go, depending. For the people who don't want another 20 years, or are okay living with either the chronic disability they might have, there's something beautiful about that too. I would definitely, I'd be like, yeah, no, let's take that organ out and replace it.
Load me up, let's do it.
I'm currently wearing contact lenses, so it's like, one step further than glasses. Like, yeah, sure, I'll take things that, quality of life is better with. But yeah, I personally wouldn't want it at the expense of another sentient life form. trying to write the right disclaimer there. I think if that came to be, but and like you said too, where cloning, to the word, I think encompasses so much more than just, oh, here's me and now I've made a carbon copy of myself, at least physically. It's helping infertility, somehow slowing down, or potentially maybe not reversing the aging process, but slowing it down for sure. Of course there's benefits. And just also learning, I think, as all research is meant to do, I think, it's meant to teach us on how something works, right? So if we can maybe, in all of this failed cloning that they have, right, with all the failed pregnancies and the surrogates and all this other stuff, maybe they can figure out how to help, regular reproduction happen more successfully, more consistently. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I'm definitely on board. But yeah, and like we keep mentioning, it just depends on how you wield whatever power you have, right? Writing and reading inherently is not a bad thing, right? Like the printing press was not a bad thing. But when used for, spewing out bad stuff and trying to coerce people to do bad things, then one could say it's used for bad. But when it's used for, so it's like, it's not the tool itself, it's the person behind the flamethrower. It's not the flamethrower itself, because yeah, in a zombie apocalypse, the flamethrower could be very, very useful. But if you're just, trying to scare somebody, is bad. So
yeah, and as we see on the screen here too, are the two monkeys that were born, the clones,
Zhong and Hua Hua.
Zhong and Hua Hua.
I don't know which one is which.
They look freaking adorable.
Oh, so cute.
They look so identical, because they are.
Because so small.
And as you can see, they're fairly healthy. But as we mentioned, there were many, unfortunately, mishaps that happened along the way for many other ones that they attempted to create, I guess is the best way of putting it, where again they had not survived the birthing process, or they only survived for a few days before eventually dying. But as they said too, though, monkey and related experiments are significant largely because they obviously bring us nearer to human cloning. But however, most people are saying though that there is no push for human cloning and there is no need for it right now. So technically speaking, there are the elements there where they could work toward cloning a human, but they're not going to. For many of the scientists are saying there's absolutely no plan to do anything on humans. This is really just to better understand genetics, to better understand biology, to better understand, as Tatiana was mentioned, certain things like the birthing process and the creation of life within an individual, within a mother or what have you. And so this helps scientists better understand that, which then basically means that it helps to understand us. And now many people are also concerned, saying, well, these are primates, we're primates. But let's be honest here. the animal that actually has the most similar genetic coding to human beings would be pigs. So unless they're cloning a shit ton of pigs somewhere, I think we're okay, because at that point we're getting really close to human genetics at that point in time. And then we have to start wondering, where are we at with science? But with primates, we actually have a lot more differences actually with them. Surprising, and most people don't realize that, but it's true. So this is, I think, an interesting step in a way. I mean, I think, again, scientifically, it means it has a lot of potential. I mean, from an animal rights point of view, this is horrible and something that should not be happening if there's this much of a fail rate to it. So it's just interesting. I would love to know, and unfortunately don't really go into detail from what we've come across, into some of the major goals or purposes behind this specific experiment. Really, most of the articles make it sound like, hey guys, well, we did it, so that's cool. All right, see you at the kegger. We'll talk about it then. Like, that's really about it, right?
Where we'll eat some pigs.
Not cloned. But anyway, so it's a very fascinating subject. We'll have to see where we go. Again, it's taken us this long, from 1999 until 2018, to now get to 2 monkeys. So we'll see what happens. We'll see where we go with this. Ideally, I would love to see it for at least organs, especially like some kind of like 3D printing method or of creation, or cell method, whatever you want to do that works to really help people out who are waiting for that new kidney or that heart or what have you. And yeah, okay, people make mistakes with their bodies, but hopefully they've learned enough where they will not abuse the second opportunity. You know, and as we talk about intelligence, we've talked about intelligence with people buying flamethrowers and white t-shirts for $120, to that of understanding and increasing our knowledge of life. Artificial intelligence has been a huge topic recently. And when I say recently, I mean even within the past 5 years, there's been huge progressions and implementations of AI. Now, a lot of it we're familiar with has to do with marketing purposes, you know, collecting data. Hey, Alexa, I want to buy this product off of this thing or that thing. Okay, and then they collect that information data so they know what you're shopping for, what you're interested in, so that way they know what kind of ads to show you. But artificial intelligence can also be used for a lot of great things. And it's interesting how the future, if you will, like artificial intelligence, can help us with our past. As it seems, there is such a thing as the Voynich.
I think I would say the Voynich, maybe? Voynich. If anybody else knows a spelling in chat, or a pronunciation, I should say, let us know.
But it's the Voynich manuscript, and it's an illustrated codex that was handwritten in an unknown language system. The vellum on which it's written on has been carbon dated as early as the 15th century, so somewhere between 1404 and 1438. And it may have been composed in northern Italy during the Italian Renaissance. Now, the manuscript is actually named after Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer who purchased this. Such a random find, but purchased this book, which you're seeing now. This is one of the pages from the book if you're watching us on Twitch. And he purchased it in 1912. And Greg Kondrak, an expert in natural language processing at the University of Alberta, and his grad student, Bradley Hauer, decided to take a crack at this book because no one has been able to decipher it. There are images in it, so people have made guesses, but no one's been able to understand the language. So these two individuals, this professor and the assistant, decided, let's use AI. Let's see what we can teach an AI about language and see if it can decipher something about the language within this book. What they found was actually quite amazing. Mind you, it's been years, decades upon decades of studying this book, trying to figure out what it is saying. And we have actually gotten a step closer thanks to artificial intelligence, because they identified the language of origin being Hebrew, and a coding scheme in which letters have been arranged in a particular order, which is called an alphagram. So the language is Hebrew, and what has happened is that whoever wrote this constructed alphagrams out of the words, which means it takes the letter of each word and organizes it into the alphabet. So if there's the letter A in the word, they would move it to the front. Letter B would be moved to the second letter spot. A C in the word would move to the third. So that way you're basically getting A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or something close to that. And so it looks like someone not only wrote in Hebrew, but then put it into this alphagram context. In a way, this kind of reminds me of Leonardo da Vinci with some of his writings, where he did it in this kind of mirrored way of writing, where everything was in reverse. And so people had issues originally with that until they figured that out. And now they're finally starting to understand the arrangement of this book, of the Voynich manuscript. And what they've said is, however, after making a couple of spelling corrections, Google has translated the first opening sentence into somewhat passable English. Mind you, anytime I use Google Translate, there is no passable version of that language. And what it says is, she made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people, wrote the researchers in the study. And now, it's a really weird way to open up a 240-page manuscript, but the phrase actually does make some sense. So this is at least a step, again, in the right direction. Kondrak says that the full meaning of the text won't be known until historians of ancient Hebrew have a chance to study the deciphered text. Excitingly, the team is planning to apply the new algorithm to other ancient scripts, highlighting the potential for AI to solve problems that have vexed humans for centuries. So once they get the concept of this manuscript down, they can then utilize this AI into other documents and books and manuscripts that have befuddled linguistics and everyone who have studied these scripts, historians and what have you, and finally figure out, what is this trying to say? What was the importance of this? And hopefully get us one step closer to understanding historical events, cultures that are now lost to time, and hopefully gets us to ideally learn from the mistakes and successes of those before us. And,
Go AI.
Exactly. Sometimes we've been talking kind of negatively about AI in a way. It can do a lot, but it can also be abused. But again, it goes back to that concept of AI as a tool. Mm-hmm. Who is wielding said tool?
Right. And actually, I put it in chat for an alphagram because I thought that was amazing. I didn't even know that something like that existed, or that someone thought of doing that. But, like MindMine would be damned. Rough, loosely.
So it'd be DEIIMMNN.
Right. So if somebody were, if we were to write an alphagrams in the English language, which I'm totally going to do now in chats, just randomly at people, it could be definitely very hard to actually figure out what language it's even in, right? Because now you're not only looking at something that you're not familiar with language-wise, but it's also not actually fully written in that language.
Right.
So whoever wrote this manuscript was either like really bored, or a genius. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and that's a bit of the importance of this, is try to figure out the story. Like, why would someone go through all the effort? Now, I'm sure ancient Hebrew must have been their language then, I'm guessing. But why would they do it in an alphagram style? What were they trying to maybe hide or keep secret from someone else from reading and obtaining said information? And, we just switched to another page of the manuscript too, if you look at the image here, if you're following us on Twitch, and it's just a variety of things too. Like, they show naked men, naked women, they show vegetables and different kinds of plants, drawings, I should say, and they have very intricate designs, like this page here, of a lot of circles and looks like just dots forming a much larger image. And it's symmetrical in a way. It's very beautiful. But again, what was the intent and purpose behind all these different random pages of information? And how are they all tied together? Is this kind of like a super old almanac of sorts, or what else could this have been?
Yeah, and this particular image too is like, maybe they also discovered cloning. Maybe those are like mitochondria and stuff, and cells dividing. It's interesting. Some of the pages, and I think I want to say that Yale University has actually shared a lot of this document online. a lot of the different pages, or a lot of the pages are very different. Sometimes it looks like a little kid drew stuff. Other times it looks sort of like they were trying to talk about maybe anatomy or farming, like just all sorts of things. And if the first sentence is something similar to she made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people, it sounds almost like somebody maybe was trying to record some knowledge of sorts as well onto this manuscript, almost like a textbook of a variety of things.
Oh yeah, I mean, it totally looks like one of my notebooks from college.
You drew naked men and women.
Little doodles, little random shapes, and just stuff, notes of personal use outside of that class, you know. And sometimes I could hardly read it myself because it was just chicken scratch. So
could be a story. Could be somebody was world building, and
there you go.
And they started writing a story, but then they also had to, there was no Pinterest back then, so they kind of just, as they saw things, wrote them down.
It could be. I mean, again,
could be anything.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity here just to better understand it. And again, as we talked about with like creation and understanding how things work, this is just another thing to add to that list where it's like we want to understand why this is the way it was. And to have 240 pages of it, it wasn't just someone going, I heart Liz in science class or anything like that. Like there was something of importance here with all the images and all the breakdowns, and it sounds like it could be of a society that we're not very familiar with and we can learn so much more from, and things will start clicking maybe for some other things we see in the world but don't see the connection to yet.
I wonder too where, I don't think the article talked about it, but I wonder who found it to begin with. Like we know Voynich purchased it, but from who, and like who found it, and like, what is the history of this manuscript, right? Yeah. But hopefully once, these the historians of ancient Hebrew actually are able to decipher, fully translate the deciphered text, at that point, we will be able to get a better sense of what it is without really knowing all the history behind it. The point that we wanted to really touch on today was the fact that, right, AI is helpful. Gasp. But also there are so many mysteries in our world, I think, that are still, mysteries, right? And whether it's because we don't really know what the language, what the written word says, or that we don't, we're not able to understand. Even if you decipher something, right, it doesn't mean that you can necessarily understand the meaning behind it or its importance, right? So this'll be cool. I'm the very first thing I ever bought on eBay, this was back in like 2001 2002, was actually an old book, a very small, tiny old book from the 1800s. At least that's what they said on the eBay post. And I bought it, and I was fascinated to like read it, but I didn't really understand what it was. It looked like lists of things, like one might you do for like grocery shopping, but then it was also just like certain observations that didn't link to each other, and I was trying to read it, and I was having trouble reading the writing, and it was in English, but it was written very fancifully, beautiful cursive handwriting. It was also very small, and so I had a hard time not only deciphering what the words actually were, but once I did that, then it was hard to figure out what was the meaning of this. Sort of like you were saying, kind of like this manuscript. It just sort of looked like something I was doodling in my actual school notebooks at the time. So it was fascinating. It was fascinating.
Yeah, and I would just real quick like to thank the Rhino Man for rating our channel today. I know you're playing Hyper Universe. That is such a fun game. Awesome to see you play that, man. Always fun to see you play that game. and welcome to our chat. We've actually been talking about a lot of different crazy subjects today, from the cloning of 2 monkeys in China to the fact that we have Elon Musk now selling us flamethrowers at $500 a pop, and he's already made $3.5 million. Yep, that happened.
Also, he's also selling extinguishers too at an exorbitant amount.
Yes, and he already sold hats, like millions of hats at $20 a pop. They have the Boring Company across from it. And yeah, they cloned a monkey. Yes, they did. And it worked. It took some time, but it worked. And now what we're talking about is actually that there was this manuscript that is incredibly old that people have been trying to figure out what it's been saying. And they finally figured out that it was actually ancient Hebrew and that it was written in an alphagram, meaning that all the letters were moved into alphabetical order. And they actually used artificial intelligence with the help of Google, especially Google Translate, which, again, we all know how well Google Translate works. Yep. But they used it and actually were able to decipher the first 2 sentences on the manuscript. And this could give us an idea of life during potentially ancient Hebrew times, or, you know, some other factor. Maybe it was the fact that there was a culture that has now died out that we're not familiar with, and that we can learn more from. And also welcome Raiden, I'm hoping, Raiden25, the best Chimera. And I believe there was one other that jumped in. Sorry if I missed you. But yes, thank you, Rhino Man, for all that. And welcome to our chat today.
Rhino Man will sell 20 million Rhino Man shirts.
And then in like 1,000 years, we will all look at the Rhino Man shirt and be like, what does this mean? What was the importance of the Rhino Man? He must have been a god. He must have been something that people praised. And thus, we must now praise the Rhino God.
Yes. I am down with that. I am down with that. Wait, I don't know if you want to show the adorable Zhong Zhong and Hua Hua, which are the 2 monkeys.
Yes.
For anybody. Those are the cutest monkeys ever. They're so small.
And welcome, Cynic, the man who mods every channel. How's it going?
And before it's ancient Hebrew lewd fanfic. There are some questionable nude drawings. Yes, for sure. I believe Yale University actually has a lot of the different pages scanned and available for viewing. We weren't sure how much of it would be appropriate on Twitch, so just to be on the safe side, we chose some
basic drawings of vegetables and circles. But there are pictures, for instance, of a group of women in, I'm guessing, is a jacuzzi-like thing or a big pot of soup. I can't tell which.
It's like green colored. So, actually, we can certainly link the article in chat. You can feel free to take a look at your leisure. But I am fascinated. I definitely want to keep up on this story, particularly because I want to know what it says. I am very curious. Is it just somebody's Instagram, Pinterest feed that they put together, or is it, is the meaning of life in there? Like, I want to know.
Or at least the meaning of ye old ancient jacuzzi. Or why are there grown human women in a pot of soup? Someone please answer me this.
That's maybe it's cloning. Maybe they had the answers to cloning because the soup is green, and I don't want to eat a green soup.
You never had split pea?
No.
I haven't either. I was wondering. So,
actually, I think just like potato soup is all I've had. It's like potato soup or clam chowder. Does that count like a soup? It's more of it. I don't know if that's like chowder and it's like its own separate thing.
You've been eating green clam chowder. You should get that looked at. Here we were talking about green soups, and she's just like, I've eaten potato and clam. I've had chili.
Is chili a soup? Anyways,
Anyway, that'll be another topic for next Wednesday.
I was going to say we should do an episode where we just talk about the quirkiness of the English language.
There you go.
And I think everyone should join.
It'll be cool, both in temperature and just fashionably. So anyway, well, for all those of you who are joining, for those of you who have been listening, again, we every Wednesday on Twitch do this talk show where we talk about left and right brain topics, how they intersect and impact our lives, and where we can go from here. And, we love to have discussions with the audience. We love to get your feedback, your thoughts, your questions, and we love to answer them live on the show. But if you are listening to us on Podbean, where we release every single episode every Monday of each week, we love to still hear from you. You can actually follow us on Instagram or Twitter at MindMineTV, or you can also check us out on Podbean, YouTube, or even at our website where you can contact us directly, which is MindMinePod.com. We want to hear from you. What are your questions or comments on previous episodes and topics we've talked about? What are some topics that you want to hear us talk about and really dive into and discuss? Because again, we want to make this a discussion. As much as, we could talk to a wall all day, we want to hear from you, and we want to be able to share with everyone else your thoughts, your questions, your philosophies and beliefs. Because again, it's what makes up human culture. And in the end, it's not about saying this group of people is wrong in a way or anything like that, but it's just to get perspective. It's to get specific perspectives so we better understand those around us and what's happening around us. Whether we agree or agree to disagree, that's another thing. But being able to first understand and analyze that perspective and know that it exists is really the key to everything else down the road.
Indeed. I also like asking a lot of devil's advocate questions, and I put Evin on the spot today. So definitely watch the VOD or listen to the podcast if you if you want to hear. But it's interesting. I feel like sometimes we go about our lives, right, and we don't talk about weird, quirky things or new developments in more depth. And so that's what we try to do as well, is just really, hey, have you thought about this? Would you clone yourself? Stuff like that.
Yeah, get those conversations started. So once again, feel free, follow, subscribe, depending on what platform you're listening to, and then that way you can be the first notified whenever we go live, whether it's on Twitch every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or whether it's every Monday on Podbean and iTunes. Make sure to follow, like, and communicate with us. Let us know what you want to hear. Again, we want to make this show about you and the world around us. So with that, this actually ends the show for today. Once again, we'd like to thank everyone who stopped by, and for the raid. Thank you so much to the Rhino Man. We really do appreciate it. And for everyone who joined him on over and came by to say hi, thank you so very much. Again, we really appreciate you. I know it's a word that gets overused a lot, but we truly do mean it. And we will look up the thesaurus and some synonyms for some different other words we can throw in there. But we honestly do mean it. Without you, this show doesn't exist. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. We appreciate all the support. And we look forward to seeing you for our talk show next Wednesday. And if you love game streams, make sure to join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, as we will be taking on more Witcher 3 Blood and Wine. Be there or be square. Thanks so much, everyone. Have an awesome, awesome week.
Bye.